About 9 o'clock the next morning, John Seaman, our squad leader, he comes along and he says, well, we're surrounded. Get you something to eat, get your weapons clean, stand by, and we'll be moving out. We're going to attack back towards the way we came. And so we did. Charlie Company, they got the job of being the rear guard because we were the farthest up. Able Company attacked down the left side of the valley, and Baker Company attacked down the right side of the valley. And we came down keeping the Chinese off our backs. We were just coming down off the hill, and what we would do is we would leapfrog each other down. One would come down past one rice paddy and continue firing or start firing while the other one was moving, and we'd kind of leapfrog. Got the bottom, then we all went down this trail, and just as we was going down the trail off to the right below us, there was a helicopter. And I had just said, I don't think they're going to get us all in that helicopter, because it was one of those little MASH kind of helicopters. Well, the copter had been damaged the night before and set down there, or earlier in the morning. And just as we went by, it blew up. So just as I said, we won't all get in there, this thing blows up. You know, they'd put demolitions in it because they didn't want the Chinese to get it. That pilot gave him an M1, and he was a rifleman the rest of the day. And so we got ourselves out of there. We got down to the bottom of the hill, and we still had some big open places to go, and we had some tanks had come up the road, and they were really good at blasting those Chinese that were coming down behind us. But they were also really good as magnets because they would just draw mortar fire. And we were close to one of those, and John or somebody said, you know, let's get away from this tank. And we did, and then we had to cross this big open space. And Joe and I, we went across the first open space, and there was a little ditch or irrigation, and I jumped into there, and just as I jumped in, there was a machine gun bullet hit the rocks. And I thought, oh man, I had a little scratch, and the scratch was from the rock that threw up. But I looked over, and about, you know, just 10 yards away was a friend of mine sitting there. And I'd seen him the day before, and he said he'd had the flu. And I said, hey, Tom, are you all right? Yeah, I said, come on with us. Oh, no, he said, I got to wait for my buddies. And, you know, as I think back on it, we were the last ones coming. There weren't any buddies coming. I should have really encouraged him to come. But, you know, you just do what you do, and the problem is you think about a lot afterwards. You think about what you should have done. But anyway, then we jumped out of there, and we had noticed that as this other big space went across, they weren't firing so much on people that were carrying stretchers. So Joe and I jumped up, and when 4 guys with a stretcher came along and went across there, Joe and I jumped up, and we were following them about 5-10 yards maybe. And then one of the guys on the stretcher stumbles and falls. And I was just close enough that by just speeding up a little bit, I was able to grab the stretcher, one handle of the stretcher, and then I don't think the guys on the front ever knew that we changed. It was like kind of like a relay race, changing the baton, you know. It was like we'd practice it all, but you know, that's just what instinct and training does for you. You just do what we got, and we finally got down to the road, and there were some other tanks down there, and they were loading wounded on them. I put the stretcher on there, and I laid it on somebody's leg, and I said, oh, sorry. And one of the walking wounded that was on the tank says, it don't matter. It was my friend Tom. And, you know, he'd gotten down there before I had. But I guess right after I left, a mortar or something had come in, and And so, you know, I keep thinking maybe if I'd have said a second time, said, "Oh, come on," maybe he would have come. But I don't know, maybe he knew something I didn't know too. When I picked up that stretcher, I did the dumbest thing a Marine can do. Is the guy that fell, he said, "You're carrying the stretcher, let me carry your BAR." And like a dummy, I let him. I never saw it again. I don't know what happened to it. I don't know what happened to him. But I ended up out on the road without a weapon. And when I finally caught up to the platoon, Ted Salisbury, he gave me the biggest ass chewing I'd ever had. And I said, "Well, what do I do?" He said, "Get your ass out there on the road and get a weapon from somebody that's got two." And there were all kinds of guys carrying two weapons. Ted had been in Guadalcanal and Iwo Jima, and I don't know how many battles in between. We still, whenever we go to a reunion, we laugh about that, him chewing me out about that BAR.
Were you able to find another BAR, or what do you?
I found an M1, and before I ever got another BAR, I was moved to fire team leader who doesn't carry the BAR. That was probably the most intense combat and the first intense combat that I got into.